Welcome to the Extraordinary Podcast, where we identify God's uncommon work in common life. Recognizing God's work requires intentionality, but articulating it motivates and inspires. Don't forget to subscribe to never miss an episode. In today's episode, I have a conversation with Randy Spiker about his life's journey and particularly how God helped him through some physical diagnosis that was difficult, but God's power is evident in his life. So let's get into the conversation with Randy. Randy, thank you for being on the podcast today. We appreciate you taking the time to share with us.
No problem.
As we begin, could you share a little bit about your professional journey, like your work experience?
Okay, right out of high school, I went to work for the railroad. Me and Perry Johnson and a couple other fellows from school, and we worked through the summer. And my dad was a foreman down at Case Company, and Case at that time in 1972 was hiring big time. But I said, Dad, I don't want to work inside a factory. I like being outside, and we were having a blast. I mean, it was just a lot of fun. Well, my twin brother went down the Case, and he got a job right away, and my dad kept on me, and so I thought, oh, okay. So I did. Well, I'd met Nora, my wife, and we were dating and stuff, and I said, only gonna work at Case 5 years because I don't want to be in a factory. I'd rather be doing something else. Well, then kids started coming along, and then 5 years becomes 7, 8, and then I was at Case for 31 years, and it was a great place to raise a family and a great job with good benefits, and so I was blessed to have a good job. You know, in Burlington, it's not like that anymore like it was back then.
What kind of things did you do at Case?
Well, for 26 years, I was a welder, and I loved that profession. It was a skill. I mean, some guys could do it, some guys couldn't, and I thought I was a pretty good welder, and I enjoyed going to work and welding. And one thing that I'll never forget, we went on a trip down to Atlanta, Georgia to visit relatives, and I saw a Case backhoe. And you always had to put your stamp on your work. I thought, I'm going to go over there and see if my stamp's on that cemetery pad. That's the thing that when they put the big arms down, it would hold the tractor in place. And sure enough, there was my stamp, and I thought, "Wow, that's mine. I did that." So it's kind of cool to see your work out somewhere like that.
Now you retired at 49 from Case.
Yeah. I do remember that.
Well, you've told me, so and most people don't get to retire at 49, so that's a number that sticks out.
I was kind of afraid, and I remember I went up to the HR person and said, "Am I doing the right thing?" Well, Case at that time was going to experience their contract was coming up, and we were told it wasn't going to be good. And so she said, "You are getting out at the right time because you got out." The whole thing with Case was 30 years and out, and you got your full pension. So 49 was young to retire. And I remember talking to fellas when I first hired in that were like 60, 65, getting ready to retire. What are you going to do with your life when you retire? Well, we're just going to sit on the porch and watch the world go by. 6 months later, you see their name in the paper. And I thought, 49, I'm definitely not just going to sit on a porch and watch the world go by. So I got another job working down at the local marina because I had a boat that I kept down there, worked through the summer, and then just fell into this job driving a sea bus. And it was going to be a part-time job, ended up being a 17-year career driving a bus. And I don't want to ramble, but when I talk about buses, it's kind of cool because my early days in the church was being picked up on the Sunday school bus. And a lot of stories there with Barney and Leo Plummer. And then when I came back to the church in 76, I believe it was, I mean, it wasn't a week or 2 weeks, Leo had me driving a Sunday school bus. And, you know, that's just the way they were. And I loved it. There's something about buses. And then I got a job driving the sea bus. And so I don't know, it's just something about driving a bus. I like doing that.
So I think it's after 17 years. I think it's safe to say that you know the town of Burlington well.
Yeah.
You can get around basically anywhere.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so you alluded to a little bit about your church history. Mm-hmm. So you attended church as a kid, got picked up on the bus?
I didn't grow up in a church family, but my mom worked with Barney Kerr down at BLS? Brown Litch and Scott. Yeah, it's a clothing store. And Barney knew my mom, and he said at one point, would you care if I picked the twins, that's my twin brother and myself, up for Sunday school? And my mom thought, well, yeah, I'll get him out of the house, for a while. So we started going to Sunday school like in 4th grade. I think it was around 4th grade. And of course, we rode the Sunday school bus, and that was always fun as a kid, So that's how I was introduced downtown on Washington at the old church with Reverend Foster, who was the pastor then. And that's how it got started.
So, but you had a time where you didn't come to church between there, or did you continue to go to church?
Well, I wrote a song about that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's called the Barney Song. And it started with Barney bringing us to church. And then when we got to be teenagers, then we kind of went away from it. But I never lost contact with Barney. And whenever me or Dana, a Pogan Miller, a friend of ours that lived right around the street from where Barney lived, whenever we had a question, we would go knock on Barney's door. And I always thought of Barney as my spiritual dad, because my dad wasn't that way, and Barney cared for me. Mm-hmm. He loved me. God. Sorry. But, so, never lost contact with Barney, and he planted that seed, and I love the man. And so, when we got married and started having kids, I vowed that, and especially if I had a son, that I would be the father to my son that I never experienced with my own dad. And I told Nora, I said, we're going back to church. Well, and before that, I had that life experience, I guess. I've always had a relationship with the Lord, but I walked away when I was a teenager and wanted to do my own thing. I didn't do anything bad. I didn't get into drugs or even drinking. I never drank. But I just knew that I was not right with God or where I was supposed to be. And I was down at work. I was working second shift this particular time. And I'd been asking a lot of questions, and to God. And I was under my weld helmet. I was welding when God got a hold of me again. And I had to stop and sit down, and I'll never forget it. And so I told Nora, we're going back to church. I want our kids raised in the church, and so we came back, and I think it was about 76 in that time frame.
So did life change for you guys after you started getting more serious about Jesus?
Oh yeah. I was in bands back then, country bands and stuff, and I finally told the guys I can't do this anymore, and I'll never forget that my bass player said, well, we could throw in a couple of religious songs if you want to. I said, no, Jack, we're not doing it. I'm just stepping away. I'd rather, play music for the Lord than these people here.
I do think that's what people try to do. We'll just add a little Jesus into our lives instead of allowing Jesus to transform our lives. That's an interesting way that you process that. Yeah. So did life? I cut you off there. Did anything else change, or how did it inform how you raised your family?
Well, what was kind of cool at the time here at the church, and this is when we were out here. Several of us young couples, including Perry and Becky and Dana and Linda Pogemiller, and the Yateses were still, they were here for a time. We had a lot of young families that all of our kids grew up together. So it was like we didn't have to go looking for outside friends to do anything. Our church family was who we hung with, and that was awesome at the time, because to me there's nothing like, I mean, if you're going to have good friends, good godly friends are the ones to have. Yeah. And we were blessed for a season here at this church.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. I've heard stories about some of those kids name dropping and people who've moved away that I don't know anymore.
Yeah,
but you could tell there was a great sense of community.
Yeah, there was.
With the adults and the kids. So
Yeah.
and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were a lot of games in the edge and outside.
Yeah.
And,
we all took our turns in the nursery. Took our turns with the youth club, and I was like NYI one year, and we'd taken to Kansas City for Worlds of Fun. We did all the great stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all a great time.
Yeah,
great time to be in the church.
Yeah. So that's fun. Now, so you mentioned some friends. You also mentioned Barney and Leo a little bit. Were there anybody else that was influential for you? Any other? Barney seems like a real main person.
Barney was the main person in my life. Leo. Lawrence Dodds. I mean, there were several of the older people that just loved on us kids when we were here.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important, because sometimes we can be grumpy towards the kids and towards the teens, but you're an example of how the love that the older generation showed you impacted you and kept you connected. So
and there was another man, Olin Richards, and I'll never forget, we did a midnight thing where the youth had a band, and they up on the platform, and they had the smoke and they had everything, and it was loud, and we were young adults, and I didn't like it. But Olin came to that at midnight, and he said, I don't agree with this kind of music or whatever, but they're praising God, and I'm going to support them. And guys like that were just like incredible, just incredible people.
That's awesome. Very affirming for you as an individual. Yeah. Now, I believe it was 2009, your health changed. Was it 2019? 2019.
2019.
Sorry, 2019. Can you share a little bit about what happened in that process?
I couldn't understand it because just the year before, I had trained for a half marathon, and me and Jay Clover went over to Nebraska and ran in this half marathon, and the finish line was you ran into the stadium at Nebraska and across the 50-yard line. It was really cool, and I was in good shape, I thought. I've always been kind of stocky and everything, and the next summer we were going to a ball game for my grandson, and I was pulling the wagon, and Nora was in front of me, and I'm like, will you slow down? I can't keep up with you, and I'm breathing hard and everything. And my legs were big, and I couldn't figure out why. And Nora said, well, Sunday morning, get up and go to the ER, because there'll be nobody there at that time, and you can get right in. So I went, and right away the doctor on call said, you may have had a heart attack. And I said, no, don't you think I would have known if I had a heart attack? And he said, not necessarily, but your legs are a problem. So I was in Burlington Hospital for 3.5 days. They took 16 pounds of fluid off my legs, but they still didn't know really what was going on. Dr. Woodard came in, and he think I may have a diagnosis, but we're going to put you on these pills, water pills, whatever, to keep the fluid off. So about a month I was okay. Well, then my legs swelled up again. I was back in Burlington for another 3.5 days. And he said, he had made an appointment to go to Iowa City for a MRI, because they didn't do it here in Burlington. And these doctors were coming in. They didn't know what was going on with me. They were just the guys roaming the halls, whatever they call those kind of doctors. They weren't my primary doctor. I said, I want to see Dr. Woodard. So he finally came in. He goes, have you been to Iowa City yet? I said, no, you were going to set that up. And he goes, oh, we got to get you up there now. So they put me in an ambulance right that afternoon and got me up there. Well, it was 4th of July weekend, so no doctors were in town, so I had to wait till Monday for the MRI. And I'm freaking out because they've got me in the darkest part of the hospital. The oldest part of the hospital was where the heart patients were. They're redoing everything else, but not this. I shared a room with another guy in about the space of this half of your office. It was very depressing. Excuse me. So anyway, I did the MRI and they found out that I had cancer. And I thought, well, what's the heart attack thing? And the cancer was a form of cancer that had what they call an amyloid that can attack any organ of your body, and it chose to attack my heart. Which, in hindsight, I'm kind of glad it did because my heart's strong. If it would have maybe my liver or my kidneys, I might have been. And I took a lot of dialysis patients to the hospital driving the C bus, and I know how they live, and that I'm thankful that wasn't it. Anyway, so yeah, I was diagnosed with cancer and the heart condition, a double whammy. I couldn't figure out why that's because I never smoked, I never drank, and tried to take good care of my body, but yet it happened.
Now you're telling this story in 3 or 4 minutes. But this was a few months you were dealing with this at least.
Yeah.
Like until you got the official diagnosis and the plan for treatment.
Well, it was a few weeks.
Few weeks.
Yeah, a few weeks.
But I'm sure that was a long few weeks.
Oh, it was horrible. I mean, in Iowa City, and I'm glad it wasn't during the pandemic when nobody could come and see me. Nora and Heather. Heather was my rock. She was there. She was there. Anyway.
So you had treatment. Can you share what was the treatment plan?
I started with chemo up there in Iowa City. I did it 3 times up there, and then they said you could do it in Burlington. I said, well, that'd be great because I wouldn't have to travel. And the nice thing about it, the chemo never bothered me. I didn't lose my hair. I didn't get sick. It must have been a small dose or whatever because I felt good after I did chemo, and I did it for 2 years, and it was almost like, not that I enjoyed it, but I became comfortable with it. And when they told me I was going to be done, I'm like, now I'm kind of nervous because I was, I'd leave and feel good, and it'd make you tired. After a couple of days, you get tired, but I never had any bad effects with it.
Now, since then, how has your health been?
Good. I just have to watch the sodium because that's my bad, thing. I can't have salt because it retains fluid and it does it real fast if I eat a lot of salt. So I gotta just kind of keep on top of that.
But now your heart was damaged in this, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the thing with Woodard, Dr. Woodard, is the first time I hope it's not watching this maybe down the road, but the first time I went back to him, he said, I don't know why you're even here because you're 68, it shouldn't be happening to you, but with what happened, you should be dead. I said, well, thanks, Doc. But then the next few times I've gone to see him, it's like, and even today, he goes, Randy, you look good. I tell everybody about you. You're like a miracle. And I said, well, God does do miracles. And I can, I always said, we think of it as a miracle, and God says, this is what I do. Yeah. But he's impressed. He said, at the beginning, my heart would never get better. But now he says, my heart has gotten stronger and it's healing itself, although it's damaged to the point where it won't pump like it's supposed to. And that's why the fluid thing is a problem with me if I retain fluid.
So you've healed more than what the doctor expected.
Yeah.
And particularly your heart is a prime example.
Very much so.
But one of the things that I would like your perspective on is we believe that God heals, but he doesn't always.
Right.
How do we reconcile that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know because I've seen him work in my life, and others, and I've seen it to where it hasn't happened in others. And I just feel that whether it's, we want instant healing, physical healing, and we think if God doesn't give it to us, he doesn't love us. But that's not true. He loves us. And to me, I don't know how to say it, because of the downfall of Adam and sin that entered the world, we're all destined to die physically. And each one of us, as we get older, we're going to have something. Our bodies are just going to break down because they're not meant to live forever. But our spirits are. And that's, I say it like this: whether I live it another day, another week, another year, I'm blessed. I live one day at a time because that's all we have is now. And I don't take it for granted. And I don't know. If God wants me today, I'm ready. If he wants me next week, I'm ready. The key is to be ready. And because I don't know, life is too short to say things like, well, I deserve to live to be 100, or I don't want to be 100. Anyway, I don't know. I'm rambling now, but
I like the perspective that when Jesus was on earth, he healed people. He healed people of diseases, but those healings were temporary. Even the raising of Lazarus was temporary. His primary purpose was not to solve temporary problems, but eternal ones.
Right.
And so that we could be restored to God and spend eternity with him. And so there are times he does heal. There are times he doesn't.
Yeah.
And, we could talk all day, but neither one of us has the ultimate answer for... Right. We can't speak for God, but we can reflect him.
Yeah.
And so I think your perspective there, whether you live a day or however long, you're ready, but in the meantime, we're to live for Jesus now.
Right. And when I think of when I was up in Iowa City going through the cancer ward, or if I would see young kids that had terminal cancer or something, or you think of, I'm not going to mention any names, but if someone, a little boy or a little girl gets in an accident and they die or whatever, and people say, well, why would God let that happen? But yet it can turn into an incredible blessing, for other people because of the testimonies of maybe the parents or whatever. My testimony to my kids is what I've gone through. I don't know. Even Dr. Woodard said it today. He said you're an example to your grandkids for the way you tackled your problem. You're not mad or anything like that, but because I am limited on some things I can do because of what's happened, but I'm still grateful.
So has your health situation challenged your faith? If so, how have you processed that?
It hasn't challenged it. It has strengthened my faith. And the verse, when I think of I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and people think, well, okay, so you can run through a wall now because God gives you the strength to do. No, I look at it as I've been able to endure all things because of the strength of the Lord in my life, and His grace and compassion and love and everything. Just it's amazing.
Yep, that's great. That's a wonderful perspective and a challenging one. So thank you for sharing that. There are people that anyone listening either is or will at some point encounter a challenging situation. Whether we're talking about physically or otherwise, there are other ways that we can be challenged. Do you have any words of encouragement or anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't cover today?
This one thing I always tell my kids, because to me this is one of the biggest things we do. Everything we do in life involves choices. And when we raise our kids, we want them to be like us, and because we think we're making the right choices. But yet they're going to make their own. But I've always said every choice you make affects somebody else. That might not be because of the color of the socks you put on or whatever, but you have to decide to get up and go to work, and you have to decide to get up and do this, and that affects everybody. So I've always told my kids, when you make choices, make the right choices, because you're affecting somebody else. And I always thought that was very important.
Regardless of the circumstances, so whether you feel the world's out to get you and you're a victim, or things are going well, your choices matter. And that's good. That's challenging, and I think it calls us to intentional living, regardless of what we do. Because if we follow Jesus, no matter our task, big or small, it has meaning because of Jesus.
Well, I've always said too, we have basically really only two influences in our life: godly influences or the worldly influence governed by Satan. So who do we follow? Do we follow God's influence or what the world? And we see where the world's going. No, that's not good.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's challenging, but also I think hopeful at the same time. Anything else you'd like to share that we wouldn't cover today?
There was one story I was going to tell, but I can't remember. But
well, nope. I just want to make sure that I give people, the guests, any opportunity to have the last word and share anything on their heart. But I appreciate you being here today, sharing with us, sharing God's story, and the evidence of God's power in your life is inspiring to me. I know those who listen will be encouraged and inspired by it as well. But we appreciate you being here on the podcast today and being a guest for us. So thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this podcast. Be on the lookout for how God does uncommon work in common life. And please subscribe to never miss an episode.